I love that. I love that. I love that. Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel, Knits by Mandy. My name is Amanda, and today we're talking about my two favorite things, knitting and the Real Housewives. If you've been on my channel recently, you may notice that I've been trying some different video styles based off of what you all recommended to me over on Instagram earlier this month. I got a few requests asking to talk about reality television, and I've been thinking about doing a reality TV knit and chat. Usually at the end of my podcast episodes, I like to talk about media recommendations. Over time, that kind of just morphed into me talking about what I've been watching on reality TV recently, because that's the majority of what I watch, and why not dedicate a whole video to it? Wait, before you click away saying, reality TV's not for me, I'll catch you in the next one, Amanda. I did want to add a little bit about knitting to this video. I'm going to go through 3 different Real Housewives franchises. I based on when they film and when they're more likely to be wearing cold weather clothing and knits. I'm going to talk about each housewife, give you my own personal opinion about them, and also talk about the style that they bring to the show. And at the end, I'm going to recommend 3 knitting patterns for each franchise based on the collective aesthetic and vibe of the entire show. So there's a little reality TV, we're talking a little bit about patterns and different styles. Hopefully there's a little bit of something for everybody. Luckily, there's a lot of everything for me in this video. I'm gonna get knitting and let's jump into the franchises. I'm working on my Winona dress and I'm very, very close to the end. These are one of the same really color-wise. I have a marker here. I'm vlogging this whole process, so stay tuned for that video. This is what I have. I need to add maybe like another inch before I do the split hem. So I'm working on that, and let's get started. The 3 franchises I want to talk about are Beverly Hills, New York, and Salt Lake City. Again, chose these based on like who's more likely to wear sweaters, and this is what came up. I'm gonna go in order from what is kind of the furthest away from us. So Beverly Hills, that ended a while ago. A new season isn't super close. Then I'll talk about RHONY, which is the present. We have Real Housewives of New York right now. And I'll end us with Salt Lake City because the trailer for Salt Lake City just dropped, and that should be coming, I think, beginning of September. There are different things that each Real Housewives franchise does differently, and different aspects of the cast or the setting and location that of course differentiate it and make it stand out from its sisters. What Beverly Hills does the best is the aspirational aspect. These women, I think, are pretty tied with Orange County with bringing us the most kind of aspirational wealth. You have former actresses. You have Kathy Hilton and her sister Kim and Kyle Richards who were on the show. There's the setting of you're in Beverly Hills, you're in one of the wealthiest zip codes in the United States. Obviously, these women are really going to bring it. And I've found that that makes for 2 style buckets that we'll get into. Starting off with Kyle Richards. Kyle is one of the OG housewives on this show. She used to be on screen with her sister Kim, and she dealt a lot with her sister's addiction during the show. And most recently, she's brought on her older sister, Kathy Hilton, who married a Hilton and is Paris Hilton's mom. Let's just say all of these sisters have very complicated relationships. I personally feel that Kyle doesn't bring a lot storyline wise, and the thing that annoys me most about Kyle that I've seen come up in recent seasons is this dynamic of, well, I don't understand how you handled that situation and I wouldn't do that, so it's wrong. And it's just exhausting to watch. And I understand there needs to be an element of drummed up drama for the show, obviously. I don't like how Kyle works. I don't like how she moves. Splits Richards doesn't really do it for me. That being said, Kyle's style is kind of interesting. I find that her style falls more into a like classic style bucket, and that's like heavy quotes. That's just kind of compared to her cast members. When looking especially at pictures of her in knitwear, a lot of pictures came up from the cast trip when they went to Aspen, so of course there was a lot of good stuff to mine from those episodes. Kyle wears a lot of like chunky Fair Isle knits when they're in Aspen. She loves her Ralph Lauren teddy bear motif sweater. That's very Kyle. She has like, I'm pretty sure, like those Ralph Lauren like either bears or blankets in her home. I could have sworn she even wears like Ralph Lauren teddy bear pajamas. I might have made that up completely. She has, I think, some good style elements. The other thing about Kyle Richards that is flopping for me is she's obsessed with like a hat, and the hats don't always slay for me. Kyle's always trying to give, and maybe this is just because I looked at so many pictures of her in Aspen, she's really giving like, I want to be a cowboy, I want to go to Kimosabe and buy my $200 hat and watch Lisa Rinna order her friend Kendall Jenner's 818 tequila, but it misses for me. It misses. It's, when I say miss, like who am I? Like really, who am I? It's not my favorite, that's all. I'm done. Goodbye, Kyle. I'm bored. Moving on to one of my favorite housewives on the franchise. One of the best additions, and that is Sutton Strack. I love Sutton. She's a little wacky. She's a little weird. Really spices things up in an odd way, which I appreciate because I almost feel like some of the Beverly Hills women are like so robotic, and then you put in like a Sutton and they're like, we don't know how to deal with Sutton. And I appreciate watching that. I also think, and this might be a controversial opinion, Sutton has some of the best style on this show. She is a fashion girly. I believe she's introduced to the show during New York Fashion Week, and she and Lisa Rinna are like trying on couture. Sutton's not afraid to turn out a look. Sutton also, I wrote down in my notes, I think often she looks like a rich Victorian doll, which I don't mind. I think she kind of serves. As far as knitwear goes, I feel like that really manifests with either like really frilly things. She likes a collar. She likes really graphic knits as well, I was seeing. I think there was a whole bit in the last season where she was going on a date and like wearing a pretty modest sweater, and I forget who it was she was talking to. They were like, you can't wear that on a date. What are you doing, Sutton? And Sutton's like, why can't I wear this? What do you mean? What do you mean? And I just love that for Sutton. And I also understand she has said some controversial things, but on like the surface, like as a housewife, I like her and I like her on my screen. I just want to be clear, like I don't actually stan any of these women. Like I all think they're deeply flawed and kind of train wrecks, but that's kind of the whole point. I just want to be really clear. I'm not like, I endorse this person and their views. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm commenting on whether I like seeing them on my screen. So Sutton, I think, marks a different kind of style for me. I honestly think she is someone on her own because I feel like the other bucket that isn't classic style, quote unquote, is nouveau riche, labels, labels, labels is what I wrote down. And that's like your Erica Janes, that's your Dorit. Really, those are like the main two that I can think of. Erica and Dorit are always wearing something very expensive, very absurd. Erica often looks like she's like a video game character. Her style, I think, was slightly more subdued in these most recent seasons. COVID and too, I think, with everything with her ex-husband, she was trying to downplay everyone. For the uninitiated, Erica Jane, her husband was a prominent LA lawyer, Thomas Girardi. If you've ever seen the movie Erin Brockovich, he was Erin Brockovich's lawyer, and he was, I don't know if indicted is the word, he was investigated for embezzling settlement money from his clients. It's not good. There's a whole Hulu documentary on it if you're interested, and they get divorced, and last season that they show is Erica kind of reckoning with it. If you ever heard the meme, I'll play you the TikTok.
Tom's house was broken into and he confronted the burglar and then had to go have eye surgery, and then my son had to go over and help, and then my son, he rolled his car 5 times on the way home. Yeah, I'm under a lot of stress.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
If you've ever seen that, that's Erica Jane. As far as she is as a housewife, if you have mixed feelings about her, I kind of liked what she brings sometimes. And I like that she is maybe sometimes a truth teller to the women around her. Erica perhaps has a good read on people, but because of that, she doesn't open up. Like, she's a very closed off person, and I just don't really appreciate that quality in a housewife. I want you to show up and I want you to tell all, please. We're watching shows about your lives. We would like to know about them. And I feel like she likes to skirt around issues more often than not, which I don't appreciate. In the same style bucket is Dorit Kemsley. I don't even know Dorit's last name. Is Dorit. Dorit. She and her husband, PK, are, I think, into some shady financial practices, allegedly. Dorit really puts me at a loss for words. Someone who would self-describe themselves as like a child of the world. She, I think, grew up in a lot of different countries, but she's also still extremely out of touch, I think, due to the wealth that she has access to. Dorit is another one that has a really ostentatious style. I'm like, what does Dorit like? I don't really know. Like, I think Dorit just likes being ostentatious and like dripped in labels, and she'll kind of just go wherever the tide takes her that way. I think she's notorious amongst the cast for wearing designer labels. That's Dorit. She's hilarious. My favorite Dorit scene was when Jamie Lee Curtis came on last season. Jamie Lee Curtis is talking about her charity and all the free promo and swag they have for it, and Dorit was like gagging over coffee mugs and keychains. It was hilarious. She was like, oh, that's just so chic. It's just so stunning. Ah. Runner-up for Dorit moments is when she opened and designed her own room in Buca di Beppo. Two very different housewives that have similar, I think, style markers for me are Kathy Hilton and Crystal. Kathy is honestly a friend of, and I'm not mentioning every friend of in this, but she begs to be mentioned often because I think she was such a big player, especially in this last season. So she is Kyle Richards' older sister, married into the Hilton family, Paris Hilton's mom. And she is what I would call, and there's two of these in what I want to talk about, she is a quacky old lady that doesn't actually bring anything to the show besides her eccentricities. Hello, Editing Amanda here. I wanted to clarify, when I refer to both Kathy Hilton and then later Mary Cosby as quacky old ladies, I'm not trying to use the word old as derogatory and that all old people are quacky, or that if you're old you shouldn't be on the show. That's actually the opposite of my thinking. I love seeing older women be on television because we don't get to see that a lot. However, the role that they play amongst their cast, like in the context of their cast, is they are, I think, older than them. Kathy for sure, I don't know about Mary, but they're just like very quirky and eccentric, and they just say wild things. That's all I meant by it, not that being old is bad or that I don't want to see old people on my TV screen. I respect my elders, aging is a privilege, so I just want to be very clear there, okay? Back to the video. She's just a little crazy and we all love her for that. Notably, there's a scene where someone's like, well, let's not pretend like it's all hunky-dory. And Kathy Hilton, in all seriousness, goes, who's hunky-dory? Who's hunky-dory? Sorry, my impressions aren't great. But Kathy married into this huge, institutionally wealthy family. Very kind of like a classic modest style, very much like nightgowns. And I just keep thinking of, she wears this one dress to the reunion. She looks like a princess. Like, she looks like, not a princess, she looks like one of Kate Middleton's children. And it's this pink, like, short sleeve dress and very, like, demure. I think that was on purpose. She was trying to convey that. I like what Kathy has delivered. I'm pretty sure she's not coming back. I don't think I need to see more of Kathy. I think with everything that happened in Aspen, sending a cease and desist letter to NBC, it's just like, no, you can't play that game. You decided to be on TV. Play ball with everybody else. If you said something offensive, like, own up to it. But that, of course, never happened. And seeing the Kathy-Kyle relationship is honestly kind of sad and not necessarily everything that I want. I often feel that these characters who are like very eccentric and are very memeable and funny, they are kind of like flashes in the pan. They don't have a lot of longevity for these shows, in my opinion. I think it gets kind of tired, or the wheels just fall off almost immediately. They often end up saying something like very offensive and out of pocket. I totally forgot to talk about Crystal Kung-Minkoff, who is the most recent addition to the cast, I believe. She was brought on a few seasons ago. Her claim to fame and wealth is that she is married to the man that wrote the Lion King soundtrack. So she has Lion King soundtrack money. I'm sorry that I don't know any of her own professional achievements. That is really not cool of me. I don't really know what Crystal does. Crystal has not made, I feel like, the biggest visual impression on me. I do like the perspective that she brings to the cast. She talks a lot about her own identity as an Asian woman, and she talks about her eating disorder, and I appreciate the vulnerability that she brings to this cast of women, genuinely. That being said, I compared her style to Kathy Hilton's because it has a more like buttoned up look to it. I think she even mentioned in some episodes that she doesn't like showing her chest. She's often wearing like short dresses that are very high necked or kind of covered around this area. Famously, Sutton does say that she has ugly leather pants, which I kind of agree. Stylistically, I think they just lean more feminine and a little more modest. That's really, I think, where the comparison stops with Kathy and Crystal. But out of this cast, I would say these two are quite similar stylistically. So speed round, Rinna is a flop.
I proceed to talk about how Lisa Rinna is flopping, but feel that is unfair to her legacy. So instead here is a slideshow of her duster line from QVC.
I think in these later seasons, she's dressed really funny. I think in the earlier seasons, she was very like, looked like she was a former soap star. When you think about her confessional looks and things like that, I feel like they were very, I'd say understated, but a little more classic. Love what Rinna did for the show, but it got tired of her hiding behind other people's drama. Munchausen's and Puppygate. I felt like she was a little more valid here because I do think Kathy Hilton like said something really weird, but I'm good on Rinna. And last but definitely not least, Garcelle. I think she's one of my favorite housewives. I feel that Garcelle really falls into the producer role. If you watch these shows closely like me, you'll often see that there are women that drive the conversations or drive the stories, and it's the women that aren't afraid to kind of roll their sleeves up and get into the mess. A lot of it is relitigating conversations that two people had together, and then one person comes in and says, well, she said this about you. And then all of a sudden it's a group thing, and you can't be afraid to get in there and get a little dirty. And I think Garcelle does it gracefully, and I just really like what she brings to the show. I really like her energy. In my opinion, Garcelle has a really good eye for style. One thing that I definitely should mention is the crochet granny square dress she wore on one episode. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so much fun, and I loved seeing crochet highlighted in that way. It's not often that you see these women in knitwear on the show. It's when they're in more like casual contexts, whether they're on like a trip to someplace like Aspen or Montana. You don't really see people just like kicking around in knitwear. So I really loved seeing Garcelle in that dress. As far as my knitting pattern recommendations, if I had to select 3 patterns to sum up the vibe of Beverly Hills, the first pattern that I have is the Knit Duck Sweater by Emma from Made in the Moment. And this just made me immediately think of the Ralph Lauren bear sweater that Kyle Richards has. It's like a motif of an animal. It's a little more like rustic feeling. And if it was knit in hot pink, I think Sutton would wear it on a date. So there's that. The next sweater is something that you may have actually seen in a meme, but not one, but 2 housewives, at least to my knowledge, have worn this sweater. And on the front it says, I'm a luxury, and on the back it says that a few can afford. Erica Jane has this sweater. I found that a knitting pattern exists so you can recreate this sweater. It is, I think, originally like a white sweater with a pink band, and then the lettering is in the pink band. It has kind of an 80s feel, and I'll link that in the down bar if you want to recreate that for yourself. That's a little on the nose, like it's almost a direct recreation of a sweater that you can buy, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. The last one that I want to mention is the Rumble Raggin by Lydia Morrow, and specifically I could see Sutton, Dorit, Erica, maybe even Crystal wearing this sweater. I remember Crystal saying she usually covers her chest up, so something more modest like this and maybe like a black and gold. I feel like those are colors that I see her in. I could see, you know, those first three, Sutton, Dorit, and Erica, wearing this sweater in really bold graphic prints. Maybe Dorit would pair it with 1,000 hair barrettes. I could totally see them wearing this really interesting colorwork sweater, either short sleeved, long sleeved. I could see them wearing it in a dress, honestly. I could see them wearing it a lot of ways. So my thoughts on Beverly Hills. Let's move on to the next franchise. That took longer than I thought. How long is this video going to be? The next franchise is The Real Housewives of New York. I'm going to talk about the new housewives. For the uninitiated, RHONY is the second longest running Real Housewives franchise, second to Orange County. And in 2020, they filmed the floppiest flop season that ever flopped so hard. It was really unbearable to watch, and they put the show on pause, tried to figure out what to do. And while they did that, the original plan was to have a new cast of The Real Houses of New York and then create a different show called RHONY Legacy. That would include some of the more OG housewives that were from the original seasons. Due to contract negotiations, that kind of fell out. They sent them on an ultimate girls trip, which is something that they'll do with either past housewives or housewives from different franchises. They'll just like put them in a vacation house for a week and film it and slap it on a peacock. It's pretty good. So now we have 6 brand new housewives, and they're there to breathe a new life and a different vibe into the series. The most notable housewife, I think, to everyone in this cast is Jenna Lyons. She's the first openly queer housewife ever. We love that. She also was a style director for J. Crew for quite some time. Jenna's bringing fashion to the show. I'm worried about Jenna not bringing is vulnerability. When I say that, there is nothing wrong with wanting to live a private life. I think everyone has a right to that. However, when you sign up for a television show meant to really show how you live in the ins and outs of your life, you don't want to be open about it, it doesn't always work. It's not to say that housewives have been successful with either not having their children on the show. I don't know how many people haven't had their partners on the show. See where that goes. I worry that she may shut down at some point. I'm not sure if this is for her. In the meantime, I'm enjoying her on my screen. I think she is coming through as maybe a more level-headed person, but she also like seems very sweet too. Like I would want to get a drink with Jenna Lyons. Would she want to get a drink with me? Probably not, but like that's fine. I like what she brings. She is of course a very distinct style. She really likes oversized garments. I've seen her wear a lot of like V-neck knitwear. There was a scene specifically, I think, where they were in like a knitwear store in this last episode, she and Jessel, and she's wearing like a V-neck with 2x2 ribbing, which looks like my Harlow sweater. I thought that was cool. If anyone's gonna wear a cozy sweater, I think it's Jenna Lyons. Thing about RHONY is I was watching this and this actually inspired my video because they were wearing so much knitwear. They film during the holiday season, which I love because it's really cozy and it's nice. There's been a lot of good knitwear even in like these first 5 episodes of Real Housewives of New York. The next housewife is Jessel. And now as someone with South Asian background, I love to see Indian representation on my screen. However, I've got my eye on Jessel, I think. Did I write that down? No, I didn't. Who did I write I've got my eye on you? Oh, I wrote that about Erin. I've got my eye on you. I would say for Jessel, I think she's someone who is a little insecure. I think it kind of shows in her scenes that she's not super comfortable in front of the cameras. And maybe with the new group of women, I think that she has the same kind of awkwardness that Sutton has. So that's why I'm kind of like, maybe this will work because it's kind of interesting to watch. It can be funny to hear people say kind of off the cuff things like, I hope your grandmother's memorial went well. And I think that Tribeca is an up-and-coming neighborhood. That's just kind of funny to me, so I'm interested. And also, Jessel is another fashion girly. I believe she was saying she worked for Michael Kors. I'm still kind of getting a feel for these women's fashion tastes. You see recently in the Bryn's Giving episode, she's wearing another like V-neck sweater, but instead like the ribbing is also like a choker, like a little scarf. Moving on to Bryn. Bryn's slaying the game for me. I think she's bringing everything. She has a star quality. People were saying that she's kind of maybe the next Bethany and that she is either the narrator or the voice of reason for the cast. I'm not quite sure. I think there's something like, I don't know, there's something there about her that makes me feel like she's a little bit of an unreliable narrator. I can't put my finger on it. I think the thing about Bryn is I do feel like, is there an aspect of her putting it on? The more I watch, the more I think, no, she's not, and she just has that quality about her. I've been really enjoying watching her. She feels like the youngest and the freshest on this cast, and that reflects really in her style. She rolls up to the Hamptons in like joggers and a fur coat, and she also is wearing one of the Diana sheep sweaters in early episodes, which I absolutely loved. I think that's something I feel like past RHONY housewives would wear. Like, I feel like Dorinda would wear that at Bluestone Mansion. I don't know. I just like her, and I'm excited to see more from her. Next is Erin. I like Erin's style. Erin has a very sleek, cool, modern style. I think she's funny. I think she's a good anchor for the show. It's kind of all I have to say about her right now. A lot of the patterns that I pulled from were kind of inspired by clothes that she was wearing, and I can't believe that she hosted women at her house and only had caviar for them to eat. But anyway, okay, next is Sai. So off the bat, I like her husband. I like the kind of banter they have. I like their rapport. I like seeing them, and I like her Brooklyn home. I also really like her style. It's a fashion influencer with like a tone of refinement. I get the feeling that Sai knows what her style is, and I really like that. I do think Sai's confessionals need a lot of work. All of these women, their confessionals need work. They're not that funny. I was listening to one of my favorite Bravo podcasts, and they pointed that out. That one's called Watch What Crappens. It's like, I need a little help. They're all like, okay, let's workshop some of these jokes, ladies, because they're all not landing. The last housewife on this cast is Uba, who is a queen. She's gorgeous. There's specifically a picture of her in this really gorgeous table work sweater that looks really cozy, and I'm appreciating what she's bringing so far. I'm a little worried that the hot sauce thing is her only plot line, in which case I'm like, okay, Uba, like, you might need to bring something else to the table. But I think it's there. I think she definitely has that potential. Too early to tell on most any of these housewives. These are all kind of my first impressions for RHONY. The season's still airing as we speak. I could be totally singing a different tune by the end of this next season. As far as style goes, this franchise out of the three that I'm talking about feels the most cohesive style-wise, even though these women are all very different. I don't want to say they're all in harmony, but like, kind of. You look at like Beverly Hills and especially Salt Lake City, they all look like they're going to different places. They're all going to different venues. Not so much so far with the RHONY women. There's a lot of classic lines in their knitwear. They have this more like lived-in feel, which I really appreciate. As far as sweaters go, I have one that I've made and one that I've already mentioned, which is the Harlow sweater V-neck edition. Top shoulder sweater with 2x2 ribbing. I have to mention it because I felt that Jessel and Jenna wore similar styles, and I think they would wear this in a very luxe, maybe cashmere yarn. The next two are very similar. They're either ribbed turtleneck or ribbed mock neck sweaters, specifically in 2x2 ribbing. So the first is the Lunati. I think that Erin was wearing something like this in the most recent episode where they're getting coffee and playing chess. I really like that look. I think it's really nice. So the Lunati is more like short sleeved. fingering weight, and then there's a knitting for olive pattern as well. I think it's called the classic rib, that just has the rib go straight up into the neck. It's all one piece. There's something that's very chic about that to me, to have those continuous lines, and something that I think the ladies of New York would appreciate. I'm gonna take a break from this, obviously, while we talk about RHOSLC, because I'm at my splitting point, but just pretend that I'm knitting. I actually don't have anything else to knit on right now, which is kind of weird. Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I had to do Salt Lake City. It is the only city where it is like characteristically snowy there. I know New York is cold and snowy, but like Salt Lake City is just a little different. It's mountainous, and they serve so many winter looks. They're on the slopes a lot in the show. They go skiing like so much. It's ridiculous. There's a lot here. There's a lot in the housewives. There's a lot in the fashion. This is I think more like Beverly Hills, where there is a clear juncture in the different styles of these women, and I'm here for it. Let's start by talking about the two blonde Mormon cousins, Heather and Whitney. I think that these women are on opposite trajectories on this show. Heather was popping off, but now she's flopping, and Whitney was flopping, but now she's popping off. I think that Heather had a lot of things going for her, in that people were saying she's the narrator of the show, she's the Bethany of Salt Lake City, she had great confessionals, she's funny, she's really funny, and I think there's an aspect of her that's also relatable and people can connect to her story. That being said, something that happens in these franchises is that all goes to their head, and I see that happening with Heather. Whitney, on the other hand, I was like, what is Whitney bringing? She's kind of a mess in the early season, and then by season 3, I can appreciate how much vulnerability and honesty that Whitney has brought to the show. She is totally a truth seeker, where I feel that Heather is a harmony seeker. I appreciate that about them. You need both on the show, right? Both of them have kind of more basic style in comparison to their castmates. Heather sometimes flops for me, to be honest with you. I don't have that many notable things to say about her style. I think she has some cute looks. Whitney also kind of feels Fashion Nova-esque to me, and there's nothing wrong with this, but for a housewife, I'm expecting more, to be honest. I'm interested to see who Heather is without Jen Shah on screen. It is really sad to see her and Whitney's relationship deteriorate. I really didn't like watching that in this last season. Next is another woman who I'm not sure if they're bringing back as a housewife or a friend of, and it's Mary Cosby. Now, if you remember what I said about Kathy Hilton, this is a quirky old lady who has nothing to bring to the show except her own eccentricities, and I believe that. I haven't given a lot of backstory on any of these women because that's just so much, but the backstory on Mary is that she married her step-grandfather and is the leader of like a cult. Okay, like check it out on Reddit. It's a little unsettling, to be honest with you. This is my unpopular opinion. I know people are excited to have her back on the screen because she said truly such quackadoodle things, but I don't like her on my screen. I feel that she is unsettling and she's an unreliable narrator, and I also feel that she doesn't give actually anything of herself to the storylines. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel real. Whitney Wild Rose shared her healing journey, and what is Mary being real about? I don't know. Like, I'm gonna get flamed about having this opinion about Mary, but let me kind of clarify my opinion. I don't appreciate when housewives don't play by the same rules as their castmates. Like, Mary only showed up to trips when she wanted to. She would only show up to film, I felt like, when she wanted to, and she didn't feel like a consistent member of the cast. However, she is being brought back as a friend of, so I will say I will keep an open mind about her being back on the show. However, like, I'm very skeptical, and yes, I think she's going to say really funny things. I do think that, but is that enough? Remains to be seen. I have an open mind. A little skeptical. As eccentric Mary is, that shows in her fashion. She's a very much like a labels girl. She has this crazy closet. She's also someone I think who dresses a little bit more modestly, but she is definitely like interesting fashion, and I do applaud her for that. Next is, I love that. I love that. I love that. Lisa Barlow. I love Lisa Barlow. Go girl, give us nothing. She's someone who's a little awkward. She's a little awkward. I love that she brings her awkwardness to the show. I think this is someone whose awkwardness thrives on television, but she's also, I don't want to say unapologetically herself, because I think there's something contrived about her, but I like what she gives. I'm excited to see where her and Meredith's story goes and where her and Whitney's friendship goes in this next season. We'll see about Lisa. Lisa, when I was thinking of her style, all I could think of was like sleek, modern, silver, chrome. She has a very like streamlined style in my mind's eye. That's what I think about when I think of Lisa Barlow, and I love that. Moving on to someone who has kind of a quacky style but a very demure presence on screen is Meredith Marks. Meredith is someone who I like, but I don't know why. She doesn't really give us a lot, and she'll just leave, and you can't just leave. Sorry. I'm Disengaging was pretty iconic, and I do love a lawyer housewife, but I do have to say that her like friendship with Mary makes me extremely suspect and wary of her. How can you be on Heather for being friends with Jen Shaw? And then she was like friends with them. How Meredith moved, I also didn't like. But Meredith's always wearing like really experimental items, I would say. She's wearing crystal face masks. She's wearing Big Bird suits. Like she's kind of wackadoodle in her style, and that I really appreciate what she brings style-wise. All right, as far as sweaters for the Salt Lake City women, the first one I have is from the book Strick by, I'm just gonna say Strick and then put the name on of the author by screen because I don't want to mispronounce it. And it is called the Crazy Loop Fur Jacket. Looks like faux fur. I think that Lisa would wear this. I think Meredith would wear this. Mary might wear it. I actually don't think Mary would wear it. Perhaps Whitney would wear it. I don't think Heather would. But something just really luxe and almost camp. It's not quite camp, but like it's veering, it's walking its way over there. I think anything like that, those women would love. I alluded to thinking that Whitney and Heather have a more kind of basic style, which actually made it very easy to pick out a knitting pattern for them. Because for some of these women, I'm like, well, they just wear designers, and that's very different than a hand knit item. I think the sheer V sweater by Jessie Maid would be a good option. I could see both of them in this sweater. It's just a V-neck sweater, and it has a mohair panel that's very kind of sexy and see-through, and like I could see both Heather and Whitney rocking that. I don't know, when they go to, what's the restaurant? When they go to Beauty Lab and Laser, when they go to get a little touch up, they're just like in their very cute V-neck sweaters, like getting Botox. And lastly, this one's kind of like a Hail Mary. I don't know how strongly I would stake this, but I saw this knit knot blouse and it has puff sleeves and little bows across as the closures, and it just screamed Mary Cosby to me. But she would wear this like with a turtleneck underneath and then just like jewelry and like a hat and like maybe gloves. That's how Mary Cosby would style it. Whew. This really felt like a marathon. I hope you enjoyed this video. I could talk about reality television and knitting till the cows come home, till my face turns blue. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If not, there's more regular knitting content coming your way for the end of the month. But I really appreciate you being here, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.